Hello, everyone. Welcome to the big show. I'm Trish Regan, and we got a lot of news to talk about today. My gosh. First of all, I don't know if the Obamas are going to make it. I mean, just between us, right? I mean, this is really not looking good. And she's trashing her husband all over this little podcast that actually no one watches. But, you'll probably see more of it here than you'll actually see on her channel. So there's that. There's also this Snow White thing, which I just got to tell you, when are these companies going to learn? When will they learn? You can't just take a personality and expect to magically turn it into money, whether it be Michelle Obama, whether it be Meghan Markle, whether it be Rachel Zegler from New Jersey. You get a disaster on your hands, Disney. You get a disaster on your hands, Netflix. You get a disaster on your hands, Spotify and Lemonade, the new producer of the latest and greatest Meghan Markle podcast. Yeah, there's a podcast now that she's come out with, yet another one, in addition to the Martha Stewart-esque show Wannabe. Welcome. Good to have you here. As you can see, I am still traveling on the boat, having a good time, enjoying myself. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time. But I will never miss a show because we have so much that's happening really on the front lines of history in this moment in time. We got to talk about the new inflation report. We got to talk about the markets. We got to talk about Donald Trump's hope to actually lower income taxes for everyone. But before we do that, Michelle Obama, oh, honey, I don't know what to tell you. My gosh, these podcast ratings are not good. In fact, how do I say this? I was not married to the President of the United States. I do not have as large and big a profile as one Michelle Obama, but I'll tell you, any day of the week, I'm going to beat her on ratings, right? Well, maybe because we actually know how to produce something of value over here on the Trish Regan Show, as opposed to Michelle Obama, who thinks that she can get together with her brother and just shoot the you-know-what and think that people are going to tune into that. I mean, she did trash Barry, nickname for Barack, over and over and over again. It's like, girl, all right, I get it. You don't like your husband. I get it. You maybe are cruising straight for a divorce. I get it. You don't appreciate the rumors about Jennifer Aniston. But really, is it necessary to just air all the family laundry? She and that Meghan Markle have a little something in common, don't you think? So we're going to get to what she said because it's not pleasant. But first, just know that no one's watching. No one likes it. I mean, she had 15,000 views for all of the things. I think yesterday we had 200,000 right here on the show. So nobody's watching this stuff. She aired it and she thinks that she can just sit there and talk about nothing with her brother and complain about her husband and say how awful the White House was. And, it was so bad. Podcaster, if that's what you call yourself, Michelle. That's not a good sign. 1.4 thousand likes. Not a good sign. We got to make it to at least 1,000 right here on this show, right? Make sure you hit thumbs up, we got to beat Michelle. And the dislikes, the dislikes coming in at 1.6K. That's what we call a high beta personality. In other words, they don't like her over there on YouTube. And then take a look at this. This is amazing to me. 4,000 views, 13,000 views. I mean, the most she got was 13,000 views, and this was 12 hours into the show. Come on. Horrible ratings. Horrible, horrible. Here is something called Disclosed TV, which tracks all these ratings, and they said, Michelle Obama's new podcast, IMO, that's what it's called, meaning, in my opinion, gets only 12,000 views in 14 hours despite mass marketing campaigns. So here's the thing, we don't market here on the Trish Regan Show. There's no marketing. I send out a little note on Twitter or something saying, hey, we're going to be live. But everyone that's come here has come here because they're seeking that authenticity. And so all of this is organic, and it's thanks to you and your support. And I appreciate it and thank you for all of that. But the point is, if you have a good product, you don't need to engage in these kind of massive marketing techniques that the likes of one Michelle Obama is going to invest in, right? Because you actually have something that people hopefully want to see. Not the case with Michelle Obama, who can barely get 12,000 views in 14 hours. And, look at these comments. They're really not great. People are talking here.
With a platform.
This is on her channel.
There's
some
by every measure
two
looks
brothers
successful.
just
the first
shooting
question
is
how?
Just two bros having fun. So that's a little play on the big mics.
Gives us an opportunity to hear from folks. We're going to be taking
that people
questions
use when
from
referring to
listeners
Michelle Obama. Some of them like it, but most of them
just
need
need
the big mic thing
advice.
again. going on and on and on. And, they are just not fans of whatever it is that she has to offer, which is not much. Frankly, it's just not much. And, I think the thing that just is unsettling about it, because I'm like, in some ways, who cares, right? Who cares? What's unsettling is that it's sort of like this giant FU to America. She was the first lady for 8 years, and then she didn't have the decency to show up for Jimmy Carter's funeral. I mean, Jimmy Carter's like a hero to Democrats, okay? So, we may not like him over here on the conservative side, but let me tell you, he's a big freaking deal in Democrat circles. And she didn't have the decency to show up to that. She said she was on an extended vacation in Hawaii, and then no excuses. She didn't even make any excuses for why she wasn't going to go to Donald Trump's inauguration. So this is somebody who I think feels very entitled, and so entitled that she thinks that she can come out with this podcast that she's probably getting paid zillions of dollars to do. And for what? Just to sit there and trash her family. Okay, we get it. You know what? The marriage is on the rocks. You've been saying that for years. Apparently, if you listen to In Touch or Us Weekly or any of these crazy magazines, completely unconfirmed, but nonetheless, they're talking about Jennifer Aniston and Barack having a thing. Everybody's kind of surprised because they didn't think it would be a girl. Nonetheless, here is Michelle Obama saying such lovely things about her husband, who apparently can't keep time. No, he lives on, according to her and her brother, some kind of island time. Watch.
Barack, he had to adjust to what on time was for me.
Because he was on that island time.
Well, but, I've got this husband who's like, when it's time to leave, it's 3:00, he's getting up and going to the bathroom. And I was like, dude, like 3 o'clock departure means you've done all that, It's like, don't start looking for your glasses, at the 3:00 departure. But he's improved over 30 years of marriage. But that was you must adjust.
Why is she doing a podcast? Anybody want to answer that question? I mean, she has more money than you can ever imagine. Another example of her being totally ungrateful. In other words, she and her husband have a fortune now because of speaking fees. I'm thinking about the $500,000 that she charged to go to Germany and do a speaking fee over there. Michelle. So imagine how much he's making. So what's the point in doing the podcast and just sort of airing your family dirty laundry? It's not like you're contributing to policy. It's not like you're actually contributing to the world in any way, shape, or form. No, you're just sitting there complaining about how Barry can't keep time. Oh, and Barack, how he just doesn't get people like you do. Spirit-filled. Good to see you back in the house. Thank you so much for your generosity. As always, so much appreciated. Again, make sure you guys subscribe. Snoopy would definitely get more subs. It's true. I'm looking at Spirit-filled's comment. I mean, I don't know what she's thinking on doing this whole thing. Frankly, it's just kind of embarrassing for somebody of her stature to be stooping to airing the family dirty laundry. I get it. Like Meghan Markle, maybe she still needed to make a living and she's got some inflated sense of self in her head. I guess maybe Michelle has the exact same thing going on, because why would you do this, really and truly? I mean, this is a ratings disaster. If you're Netflix, you got to be like, what did we take on, for goodness sakes?
And then she said this. Comes to visit, it's usually like, you got to stay for 2 days because it's going to take us
so much
2
time
days to check up. Now, Barack has come in, he's come out, and he's like, y'all still talking? He'll sit down for 5 minutes, be like, how are the boys? And the flip side of my husband, right? Because he golfs. And golfing takes as long as the first session of our, it takes 5 hours to golf. He'll golf with his buddies, come back, and be like, how's X? He's good. It's like, what'd y'all talk about? Nothing.
By the way, what's the hairdo? Am I being cruel? I'm allowed to do that now and then, right? I don't love the hairdo. Just saying. The weird little bun thing on top and the multiple braids coming down the front. Anyway, she said that Barack doesn't get people. So, she's just slamming them one after another. And again, we get it. Jennifer Aniston, allegedly, unreported. We can't actually source this ourselves. This is all from the tabloids. But she's apparently somehow in the background. And Michelle comes out slamming her husband after missing Jimmy Carter's funeral, after missing the inauguration of the new president of the United States. And you just got to ask yourself, what is going on, really? I mean, nobody wants to see it. It's kind of, I guarantee you, this is the most you guys are going to see of it. So bear with me. Here's just another example. I want to show you this because she's so ungrateful and she's taught her children to be ungrateful. Let me tell you, Jeff Iverson, thank you so much. You know what? If you are the president of the United States family, you owe it. You owe it to the country to have a little decorum. No matter how much you hate the pomp and circumstance, you owe it to the country. And the fact that she is so sort of bothered by the realities of pomp and circumstance and what she has to do is a problem. And she didn't teach her kids well either. So here she is talking about how her kids, they just hate the turkey pardoning thing. And it was embarrassing. And it's embarrassing to stand there next to daddy during the turkey pardon. Here we go.
Every year we'd have the turkey pardoning. And that was the one thing that the girls would do at Barack, was to go stand next to him when he pardoned this turkey.
Yes.
And it was cute when they were little, but as they got older, you could see on their faces in the shots of them thinking, I would just poke my eyes out. Just right now, just get me out of here. I'm standing with my father telling these stupid jokes, next to a turkey. So by the time we got to the last year, the last turkey pardoning, they were done. They were just like, I'm out. I'm not going.
Really? And you couldn't have any sway on them, right? As their mother to tell them it was sort of important that this is kind of just what you have to do. She's a lot like Meghan Markle, really and truly a lot like Meghan Markle. We're going to get to that. Jeff Iverson, thank you so much for your generosity. He says, hope your cruise is going great. It is going great. It's absolutely going great. I've had a blast. The weather's been amazing. The food is amazing. My room is amazing. And my son is having a blast. He just went to the water pitting class this morning. I mean, he's just a little guy. And he drew this beautiful, beautiful picture. So all's good. All is good. Look, she also says something really interesting, guys, in that she never wanted this life, apparently. Much like Meghan Markle never really wanted the life of a royal, right? She never wanted the life of a presidential wife. She never wanted him to run in the first place, in her own words.
Being married to the president of the United States thing.
Yeah.
that none of us kind of banked on. I mean, we knew Barack was smart and, ambitious, but I think, but you talked me into supporting his run.
I did.
Because I was definitely like, nope, no way, this is crazy. We've done enough crazy stuff.
That's right. That's right. Barack came to me and he's like, I can't convince your sister to go along with this. And I'm like, whoa, go along with what? And it's like, I think I'm going to run for president. And I was like, what? I convinced you to not penalize him for being really good at what he does.
I'm just looking at your comments and Peace of Mind, you crack me up. You're like, it's so bad. What made anybody think that this would be good television or good streaming or good anything? Late Night with Tina saying she tried to make it through a few minutes of the Michelle Obama podcast and gave up. Wow, you were like one of the 12,000 people. That's impressive, Tina. I just actually pulled some clips because I couldn't make it through the thing. I mean, again, I just go back to how narcissistic are these people that they think that people want to sit around and listen to them? No effects, no special sound, no interesting graphics, nothing. You're just going to sit and listen to Michelle and her brother complain about the world, because the world's just not fair. Let me tell you, somebody else was just elected the president of the United States. Somebody else is in charge now. And guess what? The DEI and the complain, and woe is me. That's over. You know what? Pick yourself up, lady. Find your own path. I'm sorry you're mad at Barry or whatever because of his links to Jennifer Aniston. Reportedly. Again, we can't actually confirm this. We're just going by the supermarket tabloids here, which I don't normally do, but I just think it's sort of funny, right? So Barack Obama, hey, at least it's a woman linked to none other than Jennifer Aniston. Well, don't forget, they've had a rocky time all along, right? The marriage is kind of... She told us this a while back. It's like, come on, you are first lady. Can you imagine Laura Bush saying stuff like this? Let's go.
People think I'm being catty by saying this. It's like there were 10 years when I couldn't stand my husband.
Michelle Obama is getting candid about love and marriage. The former First Lady doesn't hold back during a December panel with Revolt TV. When talking about her relationship with her husband of 30 years, Michelle reveals things with Barack weren't always picture perfect, especially for about a decade.
and people think I'm being catty by saying this. It's like there were 10 years when I couldn't stand my husband. You know?
do say that. You say
10 years. And guess when it happened? When those kids were little, right?
Mrs. Obama opens up about the early days before the White House when she and the former president were trying to balance family and their careers, reflecting that their responsibilities weren't always split 50-50.
And for 10 years, while we're trying to build our careers and, worrying about school and who's doing what and what, I was like, oh, this isn't even.
But the Light We Carry author says pushing through the challenging times with her husband has been worth it.
10 years, we've been married 30.
Wow.
I would take 10 bad years over 30. It's just how you look at it.
Oh, okay.
And people give up.
Is she still feeling that way? I wonder. I mean, is she still feeling that way after In Touch magazine did this little spread with one rather famous Hollywood actress, Jennifer Aniston?
The magazine that came out a couple of weeks ago, In Touch, said the truth about Jen and Barack.
That was of all the calls you get from your publicist where you're just like, oh no, what's it going to be? Or the email saying, some cheesy tabloid is going to make up a story, and then it's that.
Yeah. Does
I
your
was not
publicist
mad
ever
at
go
it.
like, is there any truth to this? Or is it...
No, that is absolutely untrue.
Well, I know it's not true.
Yeah.
I just don't know if everybody knows.
Well, it is untrue.
Some people, it is untrue. So the truth about Jen and Barack is that there is no truth.
There is
it
no
is
truth.
untrue. You know Barack Obama.
I've met him once.
Met him once.
I know Michelle more than him.
What is there a truth about you and Michelle that we should know?
That is not true.
So, knowing that,
So, again, we go back to there are those rumors. Who the heck knows? I mean, they could have fed those rumors out thinking that it helped steer people away from any other rumors that might be there. I mean, I got to hand it to him. I mean, if he landed Jennifer Aniston, we may have underestimated him, right? Anyway, I'm just saying that there's some peculiar stuff going on. You do not miss Jimmy Carter's funeral. You do not miss the inauguration of the next president of the United States unless there's maybe something else. I mean, I was worried at one point. I actually legitimately was like, well, maybe she's sick. Like, maybe she actually has an illness and we got to cut her some slack. And then I realized, no, she's not ill. She's just skipping out because she doesn't think that she has any obligation. And perhaps it's because of this messed up relationship with her husband. Take a peek here. This is the New York Post saying she's not even given an excuse. She isn't going to Donald Trump's inauguration, and she's just simply, quote, not attending the upcoming inauguration in a statement that she made to Associated Press. Wow. Meanwhile, he went to the whole thing alone, and then there were all these videos of him dining solo in D.C. as these rumors about Jennifer Aniston and the romance he's allegedly having with her continued to circulate. Here is Barry on his own in D.C. And you can see making his way up the stairs, making his way out to the car, and he is solo, poor guy. Well, Michelle's moving on. So here's a question. What is she moving on to? Let's assume that maybe the marriage is on the rocks, whatever, who cares? Is this about running for the presidency of the United States of America? I mean, is that what people do? I mean, Gavin Newsom is one, right? Suddenly he's out with a podcast. He's even interviewing Steve Bannon. What do you know on his podcast? He's trying to reach across the aisle. His base hates him for it, incidentally. But, he's out there talking to Charlie Kirk, who has a big podcast. And he's telling Charlie that he actually believes things like girls should not compete against boys in sports. It's like, who are you, Gavin? And then there's Michelle with her little podcast saying, well, I never really liked my husband anyway, effectively. And not in so many words. Well, yeah, in so many words. So what is it about? I mean, she's trying to downplay the rumors. Love you, honey. After he writes her this lovely birthday wish. Of course, you're looking at the two of them and you're going, really? You don't seem all that chummy. There's no drink in the glass. There's no food on the plate. And you're like, as far apart as you can get from each other, saying, love you, honey. Happy birthday to the love of my life, one Michelle Obama. I'm not buying it. You buying it? I'm not buying it. I'm just not. And again, we go back to this. She's got a podcast out, and it's failing miserably. 12,000 views in 14 hours. I'm sorry. You know what? You better hang it up. You better hang it up. You know who else better hang it up? Another one that's a total phony. Meghan Markle is just a disaster. We're supposed to call her Meghan Sussex now, this like last name made up out of thin air. Meghan Markle and Michelle Obama, they actually have a lot in common, believe it or not. Two women who believe they're kind of owed something, right? And that they don't have any respect for the institutions, whether it be the political institutions of the United States or the royal institutions of the UK. Meghan Markle has also just come out with a new show, and much like Michelle Obama, it's heading for total disaster territory. The viewership is lower than what she had on Harry and Meghan, and it's a really stupid show. Like, it's a stupid show where she tries to pretend she's Martha Stewart, except she's not Martha Stewart. She doesn't actually make cookies for her kids. She doesn't actually make jams in her spare time. And she doesn't make things like bath salts, which just turned into an epic disaster to the point where I'm like, Netflix, what are you thinking? Like, actually, she's becoming a legal liability for you. So she had this episode recently. I didn't watch it. I'm sorry, I can't bring myself to that would be too much for me to get through, honestly. But she's got some makeup artist of hers coming to her house, and so she invites him in. Here he is, and she decides she wants to make things really, really nice for him. So she's going to give him some bath salts that she makes from scratch. But apparently, the way she makes the bath salts is actually dangerous for your health, to the point where like it could cause skin lacerations and burns, because people who know something about this watched it and they noticed how much salt that she was putting into these things, and it was dangerous, just like flat out dangerous. To which again, I go back to Netflix. What are you thinking? Like, do you not have any legal liability here? I mean, what if someone tries to do this at home? She's sitting there teaching you the recipe, at least like with Martha Stewart, whether you like her or not. I mean, she actually was kind of into what she was doing, and she wasn't making it up on the fly, whereas this one is like, I think I'm going to make some jam today. I think I'm going to make some bath salts today. But be careful, right? Because according to these Instagrammers and these people that know, that follow this stuff and actually do work with bath salts, apparently these Epsom salts need to be mixed with some kind of essential oil, or if you don't, they can cause skin irritations and actual burns. So, careful for the makeup artist. Don't use anything Meghan actually makes. There were other things that she was doing. She was making like all these different homemade candles with wax from honeybees that she claims that she's raised herself. Yeah, right. And then there's this Epsom salt mixture with Himalayan salt, arnica oil, lavender oil. Theoretically, it's totally harmless, right? But it turns out that people in the know are like, no, this is not harmless. This is actually super, super, super dangerous. And I just say, like, Netflix, again, like, have some responsibility, right? Check the woman's recipes before people get hurt. Because instead of comfort, according to some, many plant extractors and skincare experts are warning that Markle's bath salt mixture may cause rashes, hives, or even burns to the skin because she failed to add a so-called carrier oil to ease the potentially volatile effects of arnica and lavender oils. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I know anything about bath salts and lavender oils, but if I were the producer of that show, I'd darn well make sure that we weren't giving people recipes that were going to hurt them. Okay, because you're that desperate for attention. Oh, but this is not the end of her. You see, right before I came to air, one of the guys on our production team, David, sent me a funny tweet from Lemonade Podcasts. She's got another podcast out. Meghan Markle actually has another. So the Netflix thing is bombing, and the previous podcast on Spotify, you know what a train wreck that was. Like, literally nobody tuned in, and they were paying her a fortune for it. And now she's got another one from Lemonade. And I just say, like, what is it with people? Like, why are you so desperate to be on TV or be on podcasts or have a voice, and have a voice about nothing? Like, you're sitting there talking about lavender oils This is an unusual show for me today that I'm even talking about these people to begin with, right? Like, normally I don't get into a lot of this entertainment news, but I think it's actually relevant and important in the scheme of things. Thank you so much. U.S. flagpole guy, thank you very much. Trish for Truth. Yes, indeed. I appreciate your generosity and I appreciate the support so much. It is great that we have this community of followers. Again, make sure, everybody, that you do what you can to not only subscribe, but to also make sure, let's see if we can get that up there, that you hit the bell so that you know when I am here live. Warrior for Truth, thank you as well. Again, much appreciated. Thank you so much, Warrior for Truth. That is a very kind thing for you to say. I'm glad that I'm appreciated. Maybe Meghan needs like some of this, right? For Meghan Markle and Michelle Obama. Maybe that's it. Maybe they need to feel appreciated. Listen, I'll tell you why I do this. And it's pretty simple. Oops, that's a promotion for my other company, which I highly recommend. Actually, you look at use code word dollar and get 76research.com. But the reason why I do this is because I am, how do I say this? I'm a little bit honest to a fault. Like I will tell you exactly what I think, even when I shouldn't tell you what I think. And it's gotten me into trouble at various times over the years. I mean, I think about March 2020 when I came out and said, this is ridiculous. Like, the whole world is going crazy. We've got like another plane crash situation going on over on CNN and the market's tanking, and this is not normal because we're overreacting. And listen, if you want a strong economy, you better be able to fight this thing. You've got to fight this with a strong economy. You can't shut down the entire country and you can't shut down the economy. And of course, I'm trying to send a warning. And unfortunately, Donald Trump did shut down. And, there was the national warning and we had the shutdown and all that ensued, and the Democrats took advantage of it, a terrible political advantage. And I shortly thereafter found myself, very much to my surprise, because my bosses knew what I was saying going into the show that night, out of my position there at Fox. And I just thought, you know what, who needs it? Like, who needs it? To think that I had to have somebody, one, look over that script so they knew exactly what I was saying, and then when push comes to shove, not have my back at the end of the day. I don't want it. Like, I would much rather be over here on my own, able to, say, take a cruise with my family, right? And still be able to do this show and speak the truth to you, and hell can freeze over. Like, I will say exactly what I think whenever it comes into my head. I don't have to worry about scripts. I don't have to worry about middle management. I don't have to worry about not being able to say something that I believe. And so that is my motivation. And we started with like 0 subs. I mean, maybe we had a couple hundred because I had a smart producer who was like 22 and put together a YouTube channel for me years ago. She was like, you should have this. She's actually a friend of mine still. She's over at Newsmax and a great superstar producer there. And she's like, you should really have this. And I'm like, oh, what do you mean a YouTube channel? But all of a sudden it became relevant for me as soon as I left that platform. And the reality is I can speak directly to you in a far more authentic way. So I love that you're here. Please make sure you subscribe if you haven't. As for 76 Research, this is a company I did create for you guys. It was in part because of what was going on during March 2020. And the reality that so many people lost out, right? Because the media was so hysterical. And I'm like, you cannot be convinced. I've been part of the financial media. And you have to understand where they are, and they're always on the news curve. And so if the market's tanking, all they're going to do is put on bears all day long. If the market's soaring, they never want to hear from a bear, right? Then it's bulls all day long. And so how do you cut through that noise? And I happen to have a dear friend who's a brilliant investor and worked on Wall Street for 20 some odd years running billions of dollars. And he felt very similar to me. So we created 76 Research so that you could have a very authentic, transparent approach to what you should be investing in for the long term. And we have 3 different portfolios. Again, I encourage you, if nothing else, just get the basic newsletter with code word dollar. So it's just $1 a month for the first 2 months. Then it goes to $9.95. You can cancel anytime, no harm, no foul. But try, I mean, I get it. It's a little crazy right now and it's been extremely volatile, but we've got some good PPI data. I'm going to get to that in a moment. And so check that out and make sure you subscribe. Wow. Okay. Another big story. It's like these people don't learn, whether it be one Michelle Obama, whether it be one Meghan Markle, whether it be Disney as an entire corporation. Disney is expecting a bomb when it comes to Snow White. So it's coming out like in a matter of days. They've gone around and they've canceled all the premieres. I mean, the premiere in London was canceled. And then they had to cancel the premiere right here in the good old US of A. Well, they didn't fully cancel it. They scaled it back, I should say. It's now just a little afternoon show. And they're not allowing the media to come in and ask the questions as they normally would. So their idea is we're going to save our talent from having to deal with some of these questions that might make them uncomfortable. So they're canceling the full-scale premiere in LA that they had been anticipating. Variety was one of the first to report on this. Actually, yours truly was one of the first to report on at least the London premiere getting altogether scrapped. They moved it to Spain. Let's see if we can see this. Here's little Rachel Zegler from New Jersey singing in a castle in Spain. This is apparently the castle that inspired the original film made back in 1937. Here we are.
I'm waiting on a wish beneath 1,000 treetops, and as the silver sky stops, I long to leave the walls behind me. Waiting on a wish, holding out for someday, hoping somehow, some way, there comes a miracle to find me. I close my eyes and see the girl I'm meant to be. Is she a part of me I've had to hide? Wondering, will she or will I spend another year waiting on a wish? I'm waiting on a wish beneath 1,000 treetops.
Oh, don't you just love that, right? Anyway, Rachel Zegler, who doesn't have a terrible voice, and you know how particular I am on singing. Maybe that was live, so we got to cut her a little bit of slack. I saw her in West Side Story. She did a lovely little job as Maria, but she really still kind of feels like Rachel Zegler from New Jersey. The little teeny tiny little, I mean, gosh, she could have gotten a job as one of the dwarfs, right? You should have seen her next to Gal Gadot on stage at the Oscars. I'm sure Rachel didn't appreciate having to stand next to her. For a variety of reasons, those two really don't seem to gel. Not to mention, like, the whole premise of the movie seems just a tad flawed, only because you're looking at Gal Gadot saying, there's no way that mirror could say that she's not the fairest of them all, really and truly. Hey, RN Explorer, thank you so much for your generosity. Michelle Obama and Meghan Markle remind us of the important thing about becoming a podcaster. Some should be a podcaster and some should be just listeners. Michelle and Meghan should be the latter. They should be the listeners, right? RN Explorer, you're not going to get any disagreement from me here. And I'm sort of surprised, only because Meghan used to be an actress, so you'd think that she would be like a little bit more skilled, except I think, and this is my hunch about all of these actors and actresses, they're good at reading scripts, but when it comes to authenticity, often they don't really know who they are themselves. And so it becomes far more challenging for them to be real. And in this medium, I firmly believe to be successful, you just got to be real. You just got to let it all hang out. You just got to, like, there's no scripts. There's no extra bells and whistles. There's no set, much like the castle we just saw there in Spain that Rachel was singing on. It's just very authentic. Christopher Rintel in Australia. Good morning. Good morning. It's afternoon where I am, but thank you very, very much for the generosity. So this article came out the other day, and the Hollywood Reporter, for them to actually turn on Rachel Zegler and Disney, that's kind of a big deal, because the Hollywood Reporter is like, they're like MSNBC, right? To the entertainment industry. It's like MSNBC is to the Democrat Party as Hollywood Reporter is to Disney and the entertainment industry. It's like access journalism. And they know that if they want to get these people back, they better do a nice little profile. But they came out and admitted that this has just been a train wreck. And at this point, like, the company executives just want to get over it. They just want to get through this premiere, and they want to get over it. And they don't think that this thing is going to do very well. They don't think it's going to do as well as Cinderella. I think Cinderella, don't quote me because I'm just getting this off the top of my head, I think it made like $67 million in its box office opening weekend. They don't think it's going to do that. And now, don't forget, we got to adjust for inflation, right? You got to adjust for inflation. So in today's dollars, I don't know what those numbers are, but it would be far greater that they'd have to make. So they've changed sort of the whole theme of this around. Instead of having the big shindigs, instead of having huge advanced ticket sales, they're not doing any of that. They've actually limited the premieres. You saw the one in London got canceled. They went for the castle in Spain where they had Rachel singing outside. And then they have the one in LA getting totally downsized. And so they're not going to have the big red carpet thing with all the reporters because, quote from Variety magazine, coverage will be limited to photographers and a house crew. A house crew meaning they know exactly what everybody is going to ask. The Hollywood Reporter reporting that all of the questions are effectively going to be screened. So Rachel gets to act some more. She won't actually have to answer any questions on the fly because, well, we know she can't, not without getting in a lot of trouble like she did here.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yep. It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
So that didn't go over so well, right? Initially. I mean, there's been a whole series of things, but I think that really kicked it off. Well, perhaps the one thing that really, and this isn't entirely fair, that kicked it off was there were a lot of people that were like, wait a second, she's from Colombia. Like, why is she playing Snow White? I actually find that neither here nor there because, I mean, whatever, you know, I mean, that's a treacherous path, right, for us to go down. What I would say is, number uno, she's not very pretty, right? Gal Gadot has it all over her all day long. In fact, that's something that's come up on the internet. Like, how does this make sense? The casting on this show is really kind of outlandish and fairy tale like because there is one that seems to be the fairest of them all, and then there's one that actually could do a great job at the little evil stepmother queen, right? I mean, so you have that going on, and then you have on top of that just commentary like you just heard. So when you're knocking the actual script and premise and theater behind it all, that's not going to sit well with the people that like the Snow White story, which happen to be a lot of little girls and a lot of women all over the world. And then when you're like dumping on love, of course, because you have to. I mean, hey, Michelle Obama's dumping all over her husband. She must think that sells. I got news for them. It doesn't. Okay, like it doesn't sell. Whether you're Michelle Obama knocking Barry all day long, or whether you're Rachel saying, you know, the prince doesn't matter because none of that matters in life. I'm just going to like set the record straight. Yeah, it's sort of like everything in life. Like we are here as a species because people hopefully meet someone and fall in love and find a thing to existence. And that's sort of what it should be about. But I realize, you know, Rachel Zegler wants to make it about something else entirely. In fact, she told Variety at one of their events a couple of years ago, she said, quote, she's not going to be saved, meaning Snow White's not going to be saved by the prince. She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, right? Because she's like Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris never had kids. Kamala Harris married a divorced guy who had to divorce his wife because he took up, allegedly, with the nanny. Lovely. Just what we all should be aspiring to be one day. Okay, you know what, Rachel? I'm sorry. Again, in light of the change in political climate, this DEI stuff, this constant nauseating women's lib stuff, like it just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. Like human beings are wired a certain way, and they're not going to go to your show and they're not going to watch your movie. And so consequently, your major company, your major entertainment company, one Disney, has had to cancel its premieres. So think of the stress that they feel right now. 4 years in the making, Snow White. The director's like, oh my God. I mean, every which way they turn, they're just getting blasted because Rachel Zegler says these little things, or one Gal Gadot says these little things. And by the way, I love Gal, but you see, it's become very politicized. She has a view, which I actually adhere to and appreciate, and she's a former member of, by the way, IDF, and she obviously stands with her country, and I admire her tremendously for doing that. But she's come under attack for that. And then Rachel has to say free Palestine when she tweets out the little trailer to Snow White. So they've turned this movie, Rachel has, I should say, Rachel, not Gal. Rachel has turned this movie into a political hot rod, and it's not good for Disney. And now you get other actors on the set that are really bummed out because guess what? They can't go to the premiere. They're not going to get to the walk the red carpet. One of the guys who was voicing one of the dwarfs said, and this is Mark Klebb, I believe, that he was pretty bummed, but, quote, I understand it. You know, look, you got to be really careful in today's world. So I see why they did it. Careful in today's world. Why? Because you got Rachel Zegler, who's willing to just throw these lightning rods out there because she's got a very particular viewpoint. Don't forget, this is the same girl who said that she hoped Trump never knew peace and that any supporters of Donald Trump never knew peace. You really think Trump supporters are going to go and see her movie? I think the short answer to that, you're welcome to answer it in the chat, is no, right? They're not going to go to the movie. They're not going to patronize with their dollars Disney and a woke Snow White. And then you get all these people saying something else, which is actually pretty relevant too. And that's that, you know, the whole thing is so darn overproduced with all of these computer-generated images. That's what Snow White has become, this computer. And they wouldn't even use real little people to play the dwarfs in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And they wouldn't use the little people because they were afraid of offending people politically. It's like they are so caught up within themselves. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. And so the casting has been a mess. It doesn't make any sense from the get-go. And I'm predicting that this movie is going to be a huge problem, which is too bad, right? Because it is kind of a nice story and it could have been great, but they just got off to a very, very bad start. I want to get to Tom Homan because we get some hard news. If we started on the light stuff today, we're going to get to the hard stuff as we move forward in the show. But before we do, I'm getting better every day, and I thank Balance of Nature. Some of you who watch the program daily, you know that I had a little bit of a cold, which I said was a miracle that it's the first one I've gotten this year because I usually have like 5, and the kids have had like 5 or 7, and you know we've had all the germs coming into our house. But I've been feeling great, and I credit Balance of Nature with this. I get all my fruits and veggies daily with Balance of Nature. I take the fruits and gummies every single day. They send it to my house. You can get these actually at 35% off and free shipping if you go to balanceofnature.com and you type in my code word Trish, Trish, 35% off, free shipping, money back guarantee. So win-win-win. There's tons of testimonials on there. So go check them out. You don't have to just take my word. You could take Leslie's because she's in the chat and she actually takes this stuff too. I know she's said it to me before. Or my kid's music teacher, because he came up to me and he's like, Trish, I listen to your podcast every day and I just want you to know that I take Balance of Nature too. And I'm like, wait, you listen to my podcast every day? You know, it's funny. You get a few conservatives that you sometimes don't think are conservatives out there. What do you know? Anyway, Balance of Nature, it's really good stuff. And they help me to bring this show to you for free every day. So we love them for that reason as well. So have you guys seen this? Tom Homan getting a warm welcome. I'm being facetious. Up in Albany, New York, he decided to pay a visit to the state's capital, and look at the reception he got. Do you see him? He's coming through the crowd eating an apple. Oh, there he is, waving. He's willing to put up with any of it, right? If all of us could be as calm as Tom Homan, I give him so much credit. I've known him for many years, and he's just the salt of the earth. And he's getting heckled by Tom, Dick, and Harry there, including, by the way, an assemblyman who wants to run for mayor. He's getting heckled by all these people, and he's like, hey, bring it on, whatever. I'm just munching on my apple. I'm here for a reason, and I'm committed to that reason. I'm committed to my cause. You know, when we talk about authenticity and the lack of authenticity in, say, like a Michelle Obama or a Meghan Markle or a Rachel Zegler, this guy has all that authenticity in spades. He is what you believe he is, right? You get what you get. That is one Tom Homan, and he's committed to the cause of making sure that we get illegals out of the country, and he doesn't care how he has to do it. Here he is basically giving quite a warning to one Kathy Hochul, one Letitia James, one AOC, anybody in the state of New York who is in his way. He's making sure that he's gonna, how do I say this? Mow him right down? Because ICE isn't kidding, and Tom Homan isn't kidding. And if he has to flood the state of New York and the city of New York with ICE officers, he's willing to do it. Watch.
Criminal aliens should be deported. What's one of the first things she do? She goes down to New York City and tries to fire the mayor who wants to help me find public safety threats. Let me give a shout at Mayor Adams. Like him or love him, I called him up for 2 years by not doing enough. As a career cop, he wasn't doing enough. But when I sat down with him back in November, he came to the table. He wanted to help on significant public safety threats. He don't want to be an immigration officer. I don't want to be an immigration officer. But the mere fact he wants to get us into Rikers Island, where people are locked up because they committed a crime, he wanted to get federal immigration authorities back into Rikers Island to talk to illegal aliens who committed a crime against a citizen.
So in other words, he appreciates what Eric Adams is doing. The mayor of New York is coming forward saying, hey, you want to round up these criminals? I'm here with you. Don't forget, it was the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, that said we're not going to give out $350 to every illegal migrant that's coming in here, staying in a free hotel for 6 months with daily maid service. No. That's ending. $350 in food? They'd get like little credit cards. And the whole thinking from the left was, they have to have them because they need ethnically appropriate food. Are you kidding me? On top of it, you have a hotel owned by Pakistan, the old Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, a former luxury hotel that was hard, down on its luck, not able to make any money. And the next thing you know, we are writing a check, U.S. taxpayers, to Pakistan to house the illegal aliens in the hotel. Like, it makes literally no sense. It doesn't make any economic sense. It doesn't make any sense from a national security standpoint. And he's calling it out, along with Doge, along with the President of the United States, along with, give him credit, Eric Adams. But now that Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, who's a former cop, right, who wants to make sure that you get the bad guys off the street and is saying, hey, here you go. You go into Rikers, you get the bad guys, you export them, you get them out of the country. And the governor is in the way of that. And AOC is in the way of that. And he's like, I've had it. This is not how it's going to work. So now AOC is looking at being charged by the DOJ. She's all worked up about it. She sent a letter, to Pam Bondi demanding to know whether or not she's going to be charged, because certainly Tom Homan's making it very clear, you're in violation of law. You're impeding law enforcement. And when you do that, that actually gives us jurisdiction over you. And so this has become something that I think AOC's getting a bit nervous about, hence the interview. Maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. She was on NPR the other day speaking out about why she felt so much that she had to defend her quote-unquote constituents, which just gets me, because I'm sorry, they're not your constituents. These are people that are here illegally, and if you actually think that they are your constituents, then we have a whole other problem we have to talk about now, don't we?
You had a recent dispute, if that's the right word, with Tom Homan, the president's Homeland Security czar, so-called. You held an online forum, a Know Your Rights forum, that he didn't like. What were you doing? What was your goal as you saw it?
My job is to educate and act as a liaison of critical information to my constituents. And I was informing all of my constituents of their constitutional protections, and in particular, their constitutional protections against illegal search and seizure in the United States.
He doesn't know what to say.
Homan was upset, I suppose, because he felt that you were giving advice to people who were here illegally. Mm-hmm. Were you?
Yeah. I was giving advice to all of my constituents.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
He said he was going to report you, or even that he did reach out to the Department of Justice. Have you heard from the Department of Justice?
I have not, and I intend on reaching out to the Department of Justice to inquire.
Really? What would your question be for the Department of Justice?
Well, there is a member of the Trump administration who is threatening and seeks to open an inquiry, and are you going to do it?
That would be Tom Homan.
What would you learn? What do you hope to learn from that exchange?
I think it's important to know where this administration stands and if they intend on using political intimidation to silence their critics.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. By the way, I'm just looking at the chat and I'm laughing at you guys because you are making some comments on maybe it was bad lighting. Maybe it was bad lighting. That's all. I don't know. We'll see. Some questions about her appearance. Lighting can make or break you. So it could just be the lighting or it could be something else. We don't know. We won't speculate quite on that, but I will speculate on this. I think that she actually is going to find herself charged by the DOJ. She's asking questions as to whether or not she's going to be. Look, I mean, Letitia's already been charged by Pam Bondi. You've already got mayors that are being referred for criminal prosecution by Congress. I mean, these mayors were being asked, hey, how much money are you spending on illegals? The Chicago guy was clueless. Boston, they didn't even know. Michelle Wu's like, oh, we don't keep track of that because we don't distinguish between people who are here legally and people who aren't, which in and of itself, guys, in and of itself is a massive issue, right? Like if you can't even distinguish, if you're just spending money indiscriminately, that's our taxpayer money, then yeah, you know what? I think they get a right to go after you for that. So here are these mayors. I love this soundbite. I love Byron, by the way. Byron Donald's fantastic guy, knows a thing or two about economics, used to be a financial advisor. Those are rare on Capitol Hill, shall we say. So here he is going after the Chicago mayor. Watch.
You're the mayor. You don't have the math in front of you.
It's 1% of the overall budget over the last 4 years.
That's why you're a failing
which
mayor.
is the
Mayor
same
Adams,
number that
how
was
much did the
sent from
city
us
of New
from
York
the
actually
state
spend
of
on
Texas.
illegal immigration?
$6.9 billion of taxpayers.
$6.9 billion of taxpayer money on a problem that was fostered on the American people. Mayor Wu, in the city of Boston, how much did you spend?
We don't ask about immigration status and delivering
You don't ask about how much money the
number.
city of Boston has spent on illegal immigration?
We
Are
don't
you out of your
distinguish
mind?
between immigration status.
Do you manage
as part
your
of our
budget
city
or not,
policies.
Mayor Wu?
That is how we keep
Mayor
our city
Wu,
safe.
do you manage
we
your
have
budget or
the
not?
numbers to prove it.
Listen, just understand that your mayor does not care how much of your resources she has spent on people who are not citizens
The city of
the
Boston
city of
is
Boston.
sick of
Libertarians of the modern era, Milton Friedman famously said, you can either have open borders or a welfare state, but you have to choose. Mr. Beer, what do you choose?
Milton Friedman said he wanted to allow illegal immigration to continue. I disagree with Milton Friedman's position on that. We should have legal immigration and build a wall around the welfare state, not around the country. That's in the best interest of taxpayers.
And I would argue that under the current system where you have sanctuary cities popping up, it is not possible to build that wall. So America has to choose, Mr. Beer, you're done. America has to choose between securing our nation or protecting the taxpayer. I choose secure the nation. I yield back.
Oh my gosh, that was incredible, right? Just incredible. Hey, John Owen, a special shout out to one of, I think, John, you are the largest super chat we've ever had on the channel. So thank you, John Owen. Wow. He writes, if people don't end up in prison for what they've done to this country, no matter what Trump fixes, it won't matter. This administration will be a failure because they will get away with it again, and it will be worse when they get power again. You rock, Trish. Thank you so much, John. And thank you for your tremendous, tremendous generosity. Very, very much appreciated. But, you know, I think what John's getting at here is that if we don't start to change, if we continue to allow the status quo that has existed, that has landed us $30-some-odd trillion in debt with massive deficits that we cannot sustain and continue, and we continue to allow a certain class of people to continue to benefit, right? And they're benefiting. They're taking this all the way to the bank. Just look at what happened with those NGOs. Out of control. All of those NGOs, $22 billion. Stacey Abrams was running one that got $2 billion. They were apparently handing out appliances down in Georgia, which a lot of people are critiquing and saying, you know what, that's nothing short of buying votes. They had all of these green energy companies that they were creating because they were all effectively feeding off of this system that was all about who you knew. And they were doing so while compromising our future. And so, John Owens, thank you again for your generosity, but just calling out special attention also to what you're saying there, which is that we have to change and that things will have to people will have to pay a price. And I say this, by the way, guys, as somebody who doesn't have an axe to grind. Like I really, I just don't. And by the way, Trump doesn't either. I've talked to him about this in the past. I said to him, why didn't you put Hillary away? Why didn't you go after her? And he said, look, that feels banana republic-like. I just wanted to move on. Well, you know what? Now is different because you can't just move on. If you just move on, then you risk for certain the same exact thing happening to the next crew that comes in. And so you actually have to have a system that's clean, which means you've got to have penalties for people that are playing dirty. And the Democrats were playing dirty, whether it have been Obama, whether it be during Trump's years. I mean, what do you think Comey was doing with all his honeypot schemes running around? We had George Papadopoulos on the show. I mean, he was the victim of 3 honeypot schemes on 2 separate campaigns. They were going after Ben Carson's campaign as well as Trump's campaign. And it was all because they wanted to get intel on the opposition and who might actually win. And that is not how we are supposed to function. So John Owen's totally right. I agree 1,000%. John Owen saying if people don't actually pay the price, he says prison, for what they've done to this country, then it's not going to work. And so we've got to actually look at cleaning up the system for good, because it's for the sake of ourselves, our kids, our grandkids, you name it. It is for the future, right? We don't want to go the way of Rome, the Roman Empire. I've done speeches on this in the past. People thought I was kind of crazy, but I'm sorry. Like, the similarities are quite striking, really and truly. And we do not want to end up like Rome. Here's one, Brendan Gale. He is the junior senator from Texas, and he was just fantastic the other day. He's been very, very vocal. He's doing a great job. He happens to be my good friend Dinesh D'Souza's son-in-law, so we like him for that reason too. He's a very, very nice young man with a beautiful wife, beautiful child. Here he is saying, what the heck is going on? This can't be.
I want to ask you a series of questions. If you could answer with a yes or no answer, that'd be great. First of all, do you support allowing illegal aliens to obtain driver's licenses? Just yes or no.
So the city of Chicago has been a welcoming city for over 40 years.
I'll take that as a yes. Next question.
And that's the policy that we will hold to.
Do you support tax dollars subsidizing or paying for the health care of illegal aliens?
I support investments in all residents of the people of Chicago, and that's what I do.
That's a yes as well. Do you support free or reduced college for illegal aliens?
Again, I support the investments of all residents of the people of Chicago.
That is a yes. Next question. Do you support allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections?
Again, I'm not over the jurisdiction of that type of law, but again, I'm committed to investing in all residents of the people of Chicago.
I'll take that as a yes. I've got an article from the Chicago Sun-Times, and I'll quote here briefly. Johnson proposed, among other things, that all residents, regardless of citizenship status, be able to vote for Chicago Board of Education members. Next question. Your website states, and this is your campaign website, quote, I will not stop fighting until abortion access is completely secure for people all over the country, end quote. Yes or no, do you support taxpayer-funded abortions for illegal aliens?
I support the reproductive rights of all people, all women.
That is a yes as well. Your mayoral transition website mentioned support for creating a Chicago Board of Education non-citizen advisory board. Again, yes or no, do you support appointing non-citizens to government advisory boards?
I was invited here today to discuss welcoming cities.
Yes or no?
I was invited here to discuss welcoming cities.
This is a yes or no
If you're interested in asking me questions about the welcoming city, I'm happy to answer those questions.
No, we're going to move on. As you know, President Trump, unlike the previous administration, has taken serious action to bring foreign criminal gangs to justice, to take our border back and to restore public safety in our communities. He designated 8 transnational criminal organizations and cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. These are groups like Tren de Aragua, MS-13, Sinaloa, other some of the most grotesque and ruthless and brutal organizations in the world. You, as mayor of a sanctuary city, have been virtually giving favors to illegal aliens. Apparently, you support an enormous amount of taxpayer resources going to them as well. But you yourself have also received a lot of gifts. And for those of you who don't know, Mayor Johnson has a secret gift room that is not given access to the public or for access to the Office of Inspector General. I'd like to ask you a couple questions about that. Do you know everyone who's given you a gift since you became mayor?
The city of Chicago has had a policy for 40 years.
A yes or no question.
Where there are individuals that would like to give gifts to
I'm
the
reclaiming
city
my
of Chicago,
time. I'm going to take that as
and we do not accept those
when
gifts.
Did you become
we
mayor?
receive them on
I'm going to
behalf
reclaim my
of
time
the city
here.
of Chicago.
You're not going to filibuster here. Okay. When did you become mayor?
I was elected mayor of the city of Chicago in April of 2023, and I was sworn in May 15th of 2023.
On June 12th, 2023, you received Hugo Boss cufflinks and a personalized Mont Blanc pin. Do you know who gave you those?
So I did not receive those personally. The city of Chicago
received those on behalf
and
of
that's
the city
right,
of
on
Chicago.
behalf of the city of Chicago.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so now he's pointing to this corruption. You know, we got news. I talked about this yesterday. If you want, go back and watch the top of yesterday's show, because AOC now is looking as though she's running into a lot of trouble because there's a taxpayer watch group that's come out and accused her of spending nearly $4,000 on dance lessons, you know, so she could get up on stage and do her thing for the fire alarm guy, Bowman, who wound up losing his gig. Right? He didn't get reelected. He was like the honorary male member of the squad. And so she's dancing around the stage. And I guess that was something that she considered an expense, these dance lessons. And so she said, oh no, that was actually an election expense. To which they said, even worse, you can't be using U.S. taxpayer dollars to go to your election expenses. So she's in a whole bunch of trouble for that one. And now this guy getting called out by Brandon, hey, what are you doing with the Mont Blanc pen and the this, that, and the other? So look, all that aside, it doesn't change the underlying issue here, which is that we have these sanctuary cities that don't seem to care about their actual constituents and the people who are there legally. And that in and of itself is a massive problem. It's why Anna Paulina Luna said, I have no choice. I am referring you to Pam Bondi and the DOJ for actual criminal prosecution, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
After this line of questioning, it's very clear that these policies that you have all implicated are active and alive and well in your cities, are in direct violation with U.S. Title 8 Code subsection 1324, and it is a federal offense. But you all speak about a broken immigration system, and yet here you guys are aiding and abetting in that entire process. I want to be very clear about something. Open border policies, which is something that you guys are talking about, hurts people on both sides, meaning the people that are coming here illegally and then American citizens as well. I do not think you guys are bad people, but I think that you are ideologically misled, which is why, unfortunately, based on your responses, I'm all going to be criminally referring you to the Department of Justice for investigation. And as soon as I leave here, these will be going over to Pam Bondi. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
Effort.
She's like, look, I don't want to have to do this, but I have to do this. It goes back to what John, and again, thank you for the generosity, John. I think you put an extra zero on there by mistake. I'm sorry. Make sure you get the newsletter. Send Rob an email. Maybe we can get you a free newsletter. It's just $1 a month, but we can credit you maybe that. Listen, John, I mean, this gets back to what you were saying earlier, that somebody has to actually pay a price here and that we actually need to actually see this thing followed through. I will give the president this. I mean, here's the good news. I mean, Trump has managed to do, let's face it, in what?
Wanted to show you this because it's been
Hang on one second. I'll just say Trump is, we'll let Tom Homan say it, but he has done in basically 3 weeks what Biden said he couldn't do in 4 years. And I think that that's rather telling and pretty darn magnificent. Let's let Tom explain it.
Wanted to show you this because it's been driving me a little nuts. The Democrats for about 18 months said that there was nothing more they could do to help close the border because Congress hadn't passed a bill. Watch here. This is what they said.
It's the toughest, most efficient, most effective border security bill this country has ever seen.
Democrats were on their back foot on immigration. Now we are on our front foot.
Look, the president has been very clear. We need that bipartisan border security bill.
By any objective measure, it's strong, tough, and realistic.
I will bring back the bipartisan border security bill that he killed, and I will sign it into law.
Look, a bill from Congress might be welcome, but you all have shown in 1 month you were able to shut down the border.
Because we got a strong president. President Trump did in 3 weeks what Joe Biden didn't do in 4 years. And that bipartisan border bill, look, I respect Senator Langford. He called me, walked through that bill with me. He asked me to support it. I said no. I'm not okay with 4,000 or 5,000 illegal aliens a day crossing this border as being normal. I don't want that in statute. I'm not okay with a bill that doesn't address sex trafficking of women and children. And right now, you look at the numbers, what President Trump has did, we went from an average at the highs of 10 to 11,000 a day under Biden to 200. 11,000 to 200. The gotaways that I spoke about, 1,800 a day average under Joe Biden. You know what I saw the other day? 41. 1,800 to 41. We won't be happy if that number is zero, but look at the strides President Trump made in 3 weeks that Joe Biden could have done.
Yeah. Could have done. But didn't. And now you're in a situation where you have the likes of Letitia James or AOC or Kathy Hochul trying to set us up for some kind of contest of wills between state and federal powers. Letitia James is a great example of that. You know, the Attorney General that we all love to hate from the state of New York. Unbelievable. Just a hugely political, kind of frankly, I'm just going to say it, like rotten person. Really, really rotten person. Because what she did to Donald Trump was absolutely unacceptable. I'm sorry. You know I'm a business reporter by background, so this one really gets at me. Of all the cases, this one really stuck out at me. The idea that somehow Letitia James, the Attorney General of the state of New York, is going to come in between an individual and a loan that they're getting from a bank, and that individual is going to say, no, I know what your property is worth. Even though the bank is the one with the money on the line, the individual is the one who's making the deal. That just blew me away. And the thought of, okay, Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. Give me a break. It made 56 in 1 year. Clearly, she never took math. Oh, and where did she go to school, by the way? I had it wrong for some reason a couple weeks ago. I said she went to Harvard, but like not even. I mean, she could have, because look at who they're graduating from Harvard these days. But nonetheless, she did not go to Harvard. She didn't go to a great law school. She's not a good lawyer. She is going to get her case against Donald Trump. Mark my words, you guys. It should have been thrown out by now with the Court of Appeals. It will get thrown out by the Court of Appeals. They're scared. They're sitting on their hands because of the political environment we are in. But I'm telling you, she was way out over her skis, and she's a bad person for having done this. This is what we need to rid our system of. We cannot allow for attorney generals or DAs to be so rabidly political and go after people because they don't like their politics. It is not the America that we want to live in. But Letitia James at this point in time is now trying to set us up for some kind of federal versus state showdown over immigration. But here's the thing. Go back to the Constitution. If you were a lawyer, you'd actually know this. And the one thing that you'd find, Letitia James, is that the federal government has power all day long and jurisdiction all day long over who can be in this country, over our borders. Heck, it's why Greg Abbott down in Texas is having such a tough time trying to police that border. When he wanted the wall to go back up, that they were taken down, the Biden administration was taken down, he didn't get to first base because you see the federal government has the power over the borders. So that's what Letitia keeps forgetting here. She just wants to set herself up for a fight, probably to try and fundraise a little bit more off of it. I'm not into it.
Not only does this administration's new policy put people at risk, but it is plainly unconstitutional. The president does not get to decide which laws to enforce and for whom. When Congress dedicates funding for a program, the president cannot pull that funding on a whim. Later today, I am leading and joining with my colleagues, my fellow Democratic attorney generals, in suing this administration to stop this illegal freeze of essential funds for our state. We will not.
You see, she's out of money now and she's flipping out because New York's been cut off. And it's going to have to now go through the legal system and go through the food chain and probably go all the way to the Supreme Court because the president's saying, yeah, well, you know what? I'm not going to give New York money because New York is not playing ball with my border control, with my ICE agents. And I am not able to do the job of the federal government to protect the individuals that live here in the United States of America. Therefore, guess what, New York? You know, it's like a little kid who's just screwed up. I'm cutting you off. And she's not happy about that. She's suing over that. But listen, it's going to take time. I mean, heck, we're still waiting on the Court of Appeals on one that should be a very simple decision there in New York, that Letitia James had no authority to go after President Trump and charge him 500. No victims in that case thought it was worth. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi, who shut off the money, right, shut off the spigot, she's come forward and said, guess what? You're not complying with federal law? We're on to you. And so we are charging Kathy Hochul, Letitia James, and the head of the DMV in the state of New York, and every other state out there. We're coming after you too. So try to learn your lesson.
And if you don't comply with federal law, we will hold you accountable. We did it to Illinois. Strike one. Strike two is New York. And if you are a state not complying with federal law, you're next. Get ready. And the great men and women of law enforcement are standing behind me today. We have FBI, DEA, ATF agents. They put their lives on the line every single day to protect us. And what New York has, they have green light laws, meaning they're giving a green light to any illegal alien in New York, where law enforcement officers cannot check their identity if they pull them over. Law enforcement officers do not have access to their background. And if these great men and women pull over someone and don't have access to their background, they have no idea who they're dealing with. And it puts their lives on the line every single day. Violent criminals, gang members, drug traffickers, human smugglers will no longer terrorize the American people. And that is why we are here today. You will be held accountable if you do not follow federal law. It's over, it ends, and we're coming after you.
Boom. Okay? So I think the case has been laid out. I think you're going to have a contingency of people there in the state of New York that are not going to play ball, which is why you had Tom Homan up in Albany getting attacked, right, by all the protesters. He was cool as a cucumber, just sitting there munching on his apple, saying, listen, I take this seriously. And if you're going to stand in the way, then you're standing in the way of law enforcement doing their jobs, which means it's now in Pam Bondi territory. Pam Bondi has already made it clear to Letitia, to Kathy Hochul, and to the DMV. This is where we stand. So now it's going to escalate, you guys. It's going to escalate, and I would not be surprised to see all of them referred for criminal prosecution. I think it's gone beyond the civil state now, because they really are setting us up, and they're doing this deliberately. Like, unfortunately, such is the world in which we live, where, you know, Donald Trump can find the cure for cancer tomorrow, and he's said this, and they will not care. They will not adhere to anything that he wants. I mean, don't forget, Barack Obama was all about making sure we controlled our borders. This was like a big platform in the Democrat Party. Heck, you know, they all talked about getting rid of government waste. I've been playing some sound bites on the shorts feed from Bernie Sanders and from Nancy Pelosi. Heck, they sound like they could go work for Doge today. This is from 2008 and 2010. So they actually believed in a lot of this stuff. This is common sense stuff. But suddenly common sense is irrelevant because it's Donald Trump. And because they hate Donald Trump, they're going to stand in the way of real stuff getting done. And isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? Because, you know, government should be there for the people and for our future, but they are just there for themselves and themselves only. And there's no better proof of that than the government shutdown that's coming our way. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for it. Our government's getting shut down. It's not because of the Republicans, I'll tell you. You know who owns this? One Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer says they're not going to go along with any of this, that the Senate Dems will block the GOP funding, the government will shut down. And a Democrat is coming out saying, you know, it's tough, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. I think she kind of sums it up well. This is a Democrat from Minnesota, one Tina Smith. Let's listen in.
No Democrat wants a shutdown. Shutdowns are also really, really bad. But we're in exceptional times and a very challenging moment. And I think that it's important also that Congress, you know, steps up and does the job that we're elected by our representatives, by our constituents to do. So we'll see what happens over the next several days. I wish I had more definitive answers for everybody.
So it sounds like you're planning to vote no.
I will be voting no on the CR if it comes up, and I really want to see a vote on the short-term patch so that we can finish negotiations.
Well, I'm just, guessing here, but I think there's going to be a shutdown. And I actually think the Republicans are willing to take this chance because, well, let's face it, Elon and Trump are not too fond of the government as it is. I mean, you already have effectively the Department of Education getting shut down. There was a ruling today by one judge saying, he really can't get rid of all these employees. He's saying, yeah, I can. Well, you want to know how you could get rid of them? Like, really? Government shutdown. I mean, I don't love it. Don't get me wrong. Nobody loves a shutdown. But I'm just saying that, when it comes to negotiation here, I think the Democrats have more to lose because they're now standing in the way. They now own this shutdown. And that's not going to sit well with their constituents. It just won't. I mean, it really, really won't. But, they pack all this stuff into these bills and there's always like something for everyone, including, by the way, for Big Pharma, which is concerning. I want to tell you about that because my friends at Conservatives for Lower Healthcare are working aggressively to try and make sure that this doesn't happen. But you should just know that right before Donald Trump came in, you had the Big Pharma industry out there moving up prices on all kinds of drugs. In fact, they raised prices on 575 brand name drugs. Imagine that. In January alone, blocking competition, spending millions of dollars, of course, on ads, on lobbying. And what is the effect? Other than to cost you, hardworking American, more money when you go to buy these things that you need, in some cases to stay alive. And now they're putting all this pressure on Congress as we speak to implement mandates that will undermine the one real check, really, that drug companies have by, basically banning the very market-based incentives that help employers and help families decide which prescriptions they're going to use and therefore help manage their healthcare costs. Even worse, Big Pharma wants to strip American employers of the freedom to choose the health benefits that work for them. So these proposals effectively could hand Big Pharma a big windfall. We're talking about estimates of some $32 billion that they would get. It's like a money grab that's coming at the expense of American employers and their families. So this is not good. Big Pharma, I think is no friend to the American people. Big Pharma is out for Big Pharma, and Big Pharma has a huge lobbying industry that's working with it. It's one of the reasons they didn't want RFK Jr., right? It's one of the reasons that they didn't want Trump. A lot of reasons why they don't like what's happening right now. You can get more information and put some pressure on your congressperson yourself by going over to the site, farmerwindfall.com. This is Conservatives for Lower Healthcare. They really want to make a difference and try and get the word out. And I admire what they're doing, and I'm proud to be part of it in some small way, shape, and form. So check them out, farmerwindfall.com. Of course, remember to subscribe to the program as well. We have so much that's happening, like every day. My shows are getting longer and longer, you guys, longer and longer and longer, because there's just so much news. I mean, you think about this shutdown that's happening. You think about the NGOs that are being exposed in real time right now. I told you about United Health getting $7 billion after filling out some little rinky-dink 49-page tax form. I mean, the money spigot, right, just keeps on coming, thanks to the NGOs, the environment NGOs that Biden was willing to help bankroll. All that is coming to an end. We talked about this yesterday, but I want you to see it again because Lee Zeldin just stripped everything down. He got rid of 32 major regulations. It's worth understanding because this is going to help energy prices already. We saw it today reflected in the CPI numbers. Here's Lee.
Today, I'm pleased to make the largest deregulatory announcement in U.S. history. The Environmental Protection Agency is initiating 31 historic actions to fulfill President Trump's promise to unleash American energy, revitalize our auto industry, restore the rule of law, and give power back to the states.
Okay, I was wrong. I said 32, it's 31. Okay, so 31. They had all these NGOs spending billions and billions of dollars It's really just incredible. And there's a new developing story out of the New York Post. My friend Charlie Gasparino actually reporting on this, that somehow Biden was spending $300 billion, pumping that into the economy just before the election to try and make things look a little bit better. You had these NGOs, as we discussed, one of which was being run by Stacey Abrams, who then went on MSNBC. I've played you the soundbite, and she said, hey, you know what? This was the right thing to do because we were getting people better green energy electricity devices, like, better stoves, this, that, and the other. And others are like, wait a second, kind of sounds like buying votes to me. Stacey, were you buying votes? Lee Zeldin is not happy about this. He came out and criticized it, pointing out that this little organization she had $2 billion that it got in tax dollars, like from all of us in 2024 after having only $100 in revenue the year before. So basically the organization was sort of non-existent until the government put it into play. And they didn't even know how to create a budget. So it's not like they had any kind of track record, any kind of performance that anyone could point to. They actually had this how to develop a budget training. And they were trying to do that within 90 days, and then they're getting $2 billion a year money? Like, this makes any sense? And she kind of incriminated herself, I got to tell you. Like, to go on MSNBC and say this, she's trying to basically get the heat taken off of her, and MSNBC is doing their part to make sure that they help out, right? Let's get the heat taken off of Stacey. But I think she just kind of dug herself in deeper. You tell me.
One of the ironies of the attack on you, and I'm going to play what he did, was that my understanding is the program at the source of this whole thing is a program to lower costs for people. Do I have that top line correct?
You have it absolutely right.
Okay, so I'm gonna play what he had to say, and then I'm gonna ask you to explain what the program is that was such an obvious, ludicrous laugh line for the Republicans there. Take a listen.
$1.9 billion to recently created Decarbonization of Homes Committee, headed up, and we know she's involved. Just at the last moment, the money was passed over by a woman named Stacey Abrams. Have you ever heard of her?
Okay, so what is this organization? What is your relation to it, and what does it do?
In 2023 and 2024, I led a program called Vitalizing DeSoto. We worked in a tiny town in South Georgia to demonstrate that by replacing energy inefficient appliances with efficient appliances, you can lower your cost. And in fact, we accomplished that. For 75% of the community, they got appliances that are lowering their bills right now. We had one woman who saw her electric bill cut in half from $180 to $98. That's what we delivered. And based on that program, a coalition of organizations, famous organizations, came together and said to the EPA, if we can do this here, we can do this for millions more Americans. Let us invest the money of America in lowering the cost for Americans. And the EPA said, okay, great, go for it.
Yeah, the EPA said, great, go for it. The EPA was doing everything it could, apparently, to try and ingratiate themselves, shall we say, with a certain line of voters. But, you'd think they'd have to go after a bigger community. I think Peace of My Mind was making this point because Peace of My Mind is saying like only 67 people got these things. I don't know. It was like some little town in Georgia, like 150 people. So where'd the rest of the money go? Can I just ask? I'm just going to say, look, we need to stop funding projects that go nowhere. We need a market-based economy, and that's what I think is finally getting introduced. Important number out today. These are pretty impressive, these producer price numbers. I got to tell you, I'm a little bit surprised because I would have thought that you would have still had the effects of inflation seeping into the economy. But yesterday you got the CPI numbers, the Consumer Price Index numbers, showing an increase of 2.8% in prices year over year, which is, not that far out of line with what the Fed is usually shooting for, which is 2 to 2.5%. So that was decent. Everybody thought it was going to be 3% or above. And Donald Trump is making the point that one of the reasons you're seeing this low inflation effective already is because of all the changes that he's implementing vis-a-vis regulation within the energy sector. I want to go to CNBC. They were really excited. Rick Santelli, whom I've known a long time and used to work with over there, and he's really into the bond market, okay, and say like he lives for these inflation reports. I mean that in a really good way. And he was like, wow, when he saw this PPI number today, because producer prices, which are really indicative of what's to come for consumer prices, if producers are paying more for things, then they tend to pass those costs on to consumers. He was blown away by the number. Let's watch.
The headline, expecting up 0.3, up 0, goose egg, unched. Boy, that is progress. We haven't had a number that low. Well, we equaled it in July of last year when we had another 0. To find a lower number, you're back to October of 23 at minus 0.4. Strip out the all-important food and energy, down 1/10. Down 1/10. That's 0.4 lower than expectations. Down 1/10 also equals July of last year. Find a lower number, you're going back to COVID times, April of 2020.
Okay, so good news. Donald Trump actually alluding to this in his discussion there with the Prime Minister of Ireland just yesterday, talking about oil prices and how they're coming down and how this is pretty beneficial, right, to the overall economy. It's interesting because you do have a market that's lower. I actually bought more today. I'm a long-term investor. We can talk about that in just a second. But you had a lot of things down. I mean, other than gold today, gold trading up 1.7%. I think perhaps a play on some of this concern, right, this concern about what tariffs will mean. But this is a very good read on inflation. I'll tell you, if the Fed needs to do anything, and let's hope they don't, but if they do, they need low inflation. And so this gives everybody a little bit more wiggle room. Here is the president speaking about how oil prices are coming down.
What I'm very happy with is oil is down to $65 a barrel. And that's faster than I would have anticipated. We put on the gas, we stepped in the gas in order to get oil. And with what's happening. So we're getting that down. And when energy comes down, prices are going to be coming down with it. So in a very short period of time, we've done a very good job.
You better believe it, right? So let's try and get this stuff down in the real way. The real way is really what ultimately matters as opposed to artificial stuff. Look, I think that the problem with the government shutdown should not be ignored. It is significant. We have the Treasury Secretary out just moments ago speaking on this. Scott Bessent, I'm a big fan of his. He's a very, very smart guy. I know a lot of people that have worked with him and have very, very strong, good things to say about him as a financial intellect. He's talking about what the threat of this shutdown that the Democrats are welcoming is going to mean for the economy. Let's listen in.
I can tell you what's not good for the economy is this government shutdown. The Democrats are in disarray, they're flailing, and this is the best they can do. That I think this is the economic story for the next few days.
Not the tariff.
Not for the next few days. If they want to take us into a shutdown, they're going to own it.
So it does seem that way. Again, you go back to the headlines we're seeing out of, say, Chuck Schumer saying we're not going to budge on this stuff. And now, of course, you have Bessent, who's more apolitical, dare I say. I mean, he's not like a highly, highly political kind of guy. Usually your Treasury Secretary isn't. But he's pointing out that the real problem here is not the tariffs and the talk of the tariffs. He's actually done a lot of work on tariffs, and they're trying to be able to use tariffs effectively as a financial tool to help improve our economic well-being as well as national security issues, et cetera. So tariffs, he's saying, aren't really the problem. The problem in the near term, short term is the shutdown. I don't, here's what I'm going to say about that. I think the government could use a shutdown. Okay. I don't think we're really going to miss any of them tremendously. People that get to stay home, they will be compensated with back pay. So it's not like they're really going to be out. And, maybe we'll start to learn who we need and who we don't need in light of all this. Speaking of which, I just had my 1-year anniversary at 76 Research, and 76 Research is a financial company, research company that I started because I wanted you to guys have more transparency within the markets. I don't think you get that in the financial media. I don't think you get that on Wall Street. So I started this with that intention. We've done extraordinarily well. Take a look at the portfolios. These are the 3 portfolios we have. And this is for the year. You can see the top 5 holdings in each of these have done extraordinarily well. You can get 76 Research, the basic 76 Research report, for just $1 a month. for the first 2 months, then it goes to $9.95. You can cancel anytime, so no harm, no foul. But hopefully what it can do is start introducing you to investing, because I'm a big believer, you got to buy on the dips. If you bought back in March 2020, when I was like, this is insane, this is crazy, you'd be really happy you did. And this is another moment where I think that people are getting overly worked up in ways that aren't necessarily real and aren't necessarily healthy for their portfolios. Something that is some good news I want to share with you, breaking right now, some promising news, potentially, I want to caution when I say this, but some possibly good, good omens out of Russia right now, because of course, that Marco Rubio came forward just yesterday around this time. I was live with you and announced that we had reached an agreement with Ukraine where they were willing to have a ceasefire. And that was really important to Donald Trump. They weren't going to get anything else from the U.S. until they agreed to a ceasefire. And so then this was put forward to Putin. And bear with me here, because the clip's about a minute or so. Let's just listen to Putin speaking out moments ago about this potential ceasefire with Ukraine, and he sounds rather optimistic about it. So this could be some very good news indeed.
As for readiness of Ukraine for the ceasefire, I'll tell you my estimation of this. But first of all, I would like to thank the President of the United States for paying so much attention to regulating the conflict in Ukraine. Of course, we all have lots of current issues to deal with, and the chairman of China and the Prime Minister of India, heads of states of Brazil and South Africa, they are dealing with this issue, and they're paying a lot of attention to this, and we're grateful for this. And we're hoping that we understand that their activity is aimed at reducing loss of human life in the conflict. Secondly, we agree with the proposals for the ceasefire, but our position is based on the assumption that the ceasefire would lead to a long-term peace, something that would remove the initial reasons for the crisis. As for the readiness of Ukraine to ceasefire, there's a meeting between Americans and Ukrainians in Saudi Arabia, and it looks like a decision that is taken by Ukrainian side under American pressure. In reality, I am completely convinced that Ukraine had to ask Americans, insist on this, based on the situation on the ground.
Okay, so that's being brought to us. Thank you, Sky News, having that news coming to us live. Putin actually speaking out on that here moments ago. I want to show you, because the President of the United States also just responded to that, and he's basically saying, look, the ball's in Russia's court right now, and it would be really pretty darn disappointing if they're not able to agree to this ceasefire. So a little pressure coming from Trump moments.
Well, would like to see a ceasefire from Russia, and we have not been working in the dark. We've been discussing with Ukraine land and pieces of land that would be kept and lost, and all of the other elements of a final agreement. There's a power plant involved, a very big power plant involved. Who's going to get the power plant, and who's going to get this and that? And so, it's not an easy process. But phase one is the ceasefire. A lot of the individual subjects have been discussed, though. We've been discussing concepts of land, because you don't want to waste time with a ceasefire if it's not going to mean anything. So we're saying, look, this is what you can get, this is what you can't get. They discussed NATO and being in NATO, and everybody knows what the answer to that is. They've known that answer for 40 years, in all fairness. So a lot of the details of a final agreement have actually been discussed. Now we're going to see whether or not Russia's there, and if they're not, it'll be a very disappointing moment for the world.
I think that's interesting what he's saying. It'll be a very disappointing moment for the world. So Donald Trump kind of giving a little bit of an elbow there to Putin. You know what? I did my job. I got them to the table. Everybody's sort of here. Now it's up to you. And so this is the sort of do or die moment, if you would. It's promising that Russia's saying, hey, we're looking at this. We appreciate what the U.S. is doing. But now it comes down to actually completing the deal. So we've gotten Ukraine to the table. And I think Russia's going to look pretty bad if, in fact, they're not able to meet us halfway there. So this is sort of that moment of truth, if you would, and it's an important moment. And I'll tell you, if Donald Trump can get this done, then that's a massive accomplishment, a huge accomplishment. And once again, sort of reflects on what the heck was going on for the last 4 years. Why was there such a failure of diplomacy, if you would? Because if he's able to pull this off and Biden clearly couldn't, then, we get some more talking to do. One other story that's coming to us at this moment right now, and I want to bring to you, you may have followed what's been going on at Columbia University. You may not have followed this story, but there is a student there, a graduate student that has, his name is Mohammed Khalil, and he's from Palestine, and he's been agitating and been sort of a leader in this movement to be very pro-Gaza, and it's a movement that has swept college campuses all across the country, predominantly at some of these very big Ivy League schools, and it's been very hard on a lot of the Jewish students there because they have effectively been victimized by these massive protests, and they don't feel safe, and it's become a big problem. The Trump administration says, we're going to deport this guy. How dare he? He's supporting a known terror organization. He's, basically a rabble-rouser and a, disturber. And we don't have a place for people like that, green card holder or not. You know what? We don't want this in our country right now. And so they're putting everyone on notice. A student that is from a foreign nation that's here on our good graces with a green card, you better not be raising HELL on campuses. So they said they're deporting this guy, and now you see some of these kids out there, pro-Palestinian protesters, storming Trump Tower in New York City. Let's go to the tape.
There's more breaking news, this time in New York. The NYPD has filled its third bus full of protesters who are participating in a massive sit-in at Trump Tower. All this over the arrest of Palestinian activist and green card holder Mahmoud Khalil. NBC's Yasmin Vasugian is there on the ground for us. What are you seeing, Yasmin?
Yeah, so it seems as if the protest, Chris, now is wrapping up a bit. And I say that because there were numerous arrests that happened on the scene here outside of Trump Tower. As you mentioned, this was a protest by an activist group called Jewish Voices for Peace. They were protesting the ongoing detention of Mahmoud Khalil. We know that to be the grad student at Columbia University who helped organize those pro-Palestinian protests. The ongoing pro-Palestinian protests that happened at Columbia University on the campus there. He has an 8-month pregnant wife at home. He has been sent to Louisiana to a detention center there. His lawyer saying outside a courtroom just yesterday that he has been unable to speak with his client so far throughout his detention. We've also heard from President Trump as well, who says these arrests will be ongoing. I've been speaking to folks up at Columbia University as well, Chris, and I will say there are people that are worried about these potential arrests that are happening there at the campus, seeing what has happened to Mahmoud Khalil so far. As we saw here behind me, the group saying Jewish Voices for Peace, 300 plus people gathered here over 2 hours or so. The NYPD coming and saying 3 separate times they had to come out of the lobby of Trump Tower or else they would face arrest. In fact, that is exactly what happened. There was a city bus that was brought here along with an NYPD bus as well. The NYPD bus was filled to the brink with protesters that were being arrested, along with a city bus that was halfway filled as well. We heard from the NYPD just moments ago in a press conference. Chris, let's take a listen to what they had to say about these arrests, and then we'll talk on the other side.
Roughly 150 people entered Trump Plaza. We made 98 arrests. Those arrests are for trespassing, obstructing governmental administration, and resisting arrest by virtue of us having to carry some of the people out of the Escalade.
And I will say, Chris, Jewish Voices for Peace is a group that we know well. They have had similar protests down in Wall Street as well. So certainly this is a developing story as they're protesting the ongoing detention of Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University student. Chris.
Yasmin Vasugian, thank you for that.
Okay, so I just have a question. Like, you're here on a green card, and there's an organization called Hamas that is a known terror organization that our U.S. government has labeled a terror organization. and you're out there supporting Hamas? Like, how does that make sense? It doesn't. Okay, so it really doesn't. And we're supposed to afford that green card holder the exact same rights of any American when they're out there. I mean, how do you know the guy's not like a spy, right? If you had a Chinese student doing similar kinds of things. In fact, I just deported one, actually, I think back to China, who was also orchestrating some of these problematic protests. Don Bacca saying long show today. It is, right? But I'm on vacation, so I get to go extra long. I do need to go back and enjoy my cruise at some point. But the reality is we have so much news. We have so much news. And this kid, I'm sorry, I'm curious to know what you guys think about it, but I just don't have a lot of sympathy for him. I really don't. And he's not a kid. It's like when I called Joe Biden a kid. They want you to think these people are kids. The guy's like 30 years old, so he's definitely not a kid. And he's got an 8-month pregnant wife. Like, what are you thinking? Why would you do this? Why would you continue? Okay, for your homeland. Well, I'm sorry, but you know what? Your homeland is run by a group that the U.S. has designated as a known terror organization. And now you get a problem at Columbia University. Let's face it, where Columbia is like kind of up a creek without a paddle because they're out $400 million. They've lost $400 million because of these protests. Columbia University loses $400 million. I mean, that is a big sum of money. But you know what? This is what it's going to take. I'm going to put that on the screen so you can see it. That's what it's going to take, I think, for some of these universities to really understand what this is all about, right? Because money does talk. And it's kind of like Ukraine. With Ukraine, you had to sit Zelensky down and say, hey, we're cutting off the money unless you get your act together. With Columbia, you got to cut off the money until they can get their act together. And so now they're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Same thing over at Johns Hopkins. So Johns Hopkins lost $800 million. And by the way, we want the scientific research, right? So, we all kind of lose out in that environment. But if your scientific research is going to fund transgender clinics in India, as opposed to real cancer research, et cetera, then I think that the government has the ability to say, okay, this is really not what we intended. And so you don't have as big a sort of stroke to be able to paint with, or brush to be able to paint with. You need to actually be within a certain parameter. And it should be kind of basic that you're guaranteeing the lives of all your students on campus, and you shouldn't be left with kids who feel like they can't go to school. And that's exactly what happened last year. Last spring, Columbia University had to shut down classes. They had to go online because Jewish students were no longer safe. They couldn't have their graduation last year because Jewish students didn't feel safe. There was an incident reported at Barnard College just the other day, affiliated with the university, part of Columbia University, where there was a bomb threat there at the school. I mean, this is bad stuff. And I look at it, and I went to Columbia. I was a history student at Columbia, studied a lot of history and economics, and took a lot of international relation classes as well. And what I've learned is that the janitors are now having to scrub off the swastikas in the bathrooms at the international relations school. I'm like, this is not the Columbia I knew. Granted, it was a long time ago, but come on, we've got to do better. And the president has to be able to stick up for these kids that are just getting their opportunities taken away from them, thanks to a very loud minority and foreigners that have green cards that want to create lots of problems. So that's where I stand on it. I think you guys are in agreement. Yeah, the Cahill overstayed is welcome. Time to go home. Well, the White House is making that very, very clear. They want him to go home. They are planning to deport him like today. I mean, they're moving forward with it. It's, what is the expression? Do and then ask questions later. That's what's going down. Again, just a reminder, everybody, please check out 76 Research. My company used 76 Research's code word $. Check that out. Make sure you subscribe to the show. I am going to go enjoy my cruise. My son did this beautiful painting this morning. Do you know? I mean, it's like lots of things to do. They had like a bead making class. They had like an art class. So he's been very, very busy. We're having a really good time. We've got the grandparents here too. So it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful family experience. And I'm going to go enjoy my time with him. But this is so meaningful to